What up?
We live?
To Emergent Behavior, week 7.
7 already?
It's April 17th, 2026. KJG, how you doing?
Good. You have we set it up to get these clipped out, by the way?
Flip that. What'd you say when you wanted to clip that? Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, clip that. Yeah.
Now we're gonna
how was New York?
Session. New York was great. New York reminded me, one, it is truly the city that doesn't sleep, and there's a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that.
You don't get that in Rome Bruce Road?
I get it in a different way. It's more of an internal energy. It's just a lot of external energy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, so for context, I went to New York for the pre-Series A offsite, which is a mouthful, but it was a panel with a bunch of very well-titled VCs for pre-Series A companies, which we definitionally are. And the big message was growth at all costs. Growth is the number one thing. You should be growing. A startup isn't a startup without growth. And I think it's a good reminder to have that. So I don't know. I left energized, met a lot of cool people, got a lot of good connections.
Nice. What I forgot what to say. Any like people you connected with already, or just contacts?
Like people I'd known beforehand, or
no, sorry, anyone that you like followed up with already?
Oh yeah. I've connected with a bunch of people on LinkedIn, which honestly it was sort of tongue in cheek during the panels, but the question came up a few times of like, how do you grow? What's the distribution channels look like? And almost begrudgingly, people were like, yeah, LinkedIn is good, but it's true. That's where everybody is.
Yeah, it's like a necessary.
Everybody you're like meeting with plays the LinkedIn game where you open up your LinkedIn profile and be like, XYZ. How do you know?
Yeah.
And
do you feel like
half the time I don't know them?
Yeah. Do you feel like it's better content on Twitter versus LinkedIn?
I think Twitter definitely has more hype and like cutting edge, but it's harder to get. It's a different signal, I think. Like LinkedIn feels a little bit more nuanced and maybe a little less hype driven, and way less authentic, perhaps. Mm-hmm. Maybe these are opposing thoughts, but there definitely is a different vibe on each.
Yeah.
Especially in AI. I get a little bit of anxiety going on Twitter now, because it's just like everybody's like, I've launched the end to knowledge work. I created a thing that I can't control anymore. It's like, and I know it's all hype, and I'm in the industry, so I know it. Like, I can kind of differentiate between what is just like purely fabricated, overhyped stuff. But I imagine as like someone working at a SaaS job as a programmer who hasn't kept up with things, it's got to feel like overwhelming, probably.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I remember seeing like OpenClaw back in October.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it looks interesting. And I was like, yeah, let's probably check it out at some point. And then,
the weekend.
There's some hype, and then it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, like, this is something that has blown up, and now I feel like has subsided a little bit with Anthropic, but still.
Yeah. Do we think Anthropic was strategic about their third-party token ban, in that they were creating the pieces of OpenClaw into Claude? Do you think that was as strategic as it seemed, or was it just like a combination of separate decisions?
I think they're having capacity problems. It's this heartbeat thing that OpenClaw does, and persistent presence was actually causing issues. And then it's like, oh well, let's just cut it all off. like use that as maybe the front facing excuse, but underlying there were issues. And then like we're launching this thing too, it kind of like a line. I don't know if it was like, and they're sitting in a planning meeting, like, okay, we're gonna do this, then yeah, things will come together that well. If they did, that'd be very impressive. But I think it's more so the actual capacity. Just you see their status page, and outages is not great. And how often does OpenAI go out?
Yeah. Well, that's why with Agent Relay, TM, you don't need to depend on just one provider.
Honestly, I've been using. I used to almost always start with Claude to like start the task and then spec and then pass it off to Codex to implement. I've actually gone with GPT 5.4 to start and then write the workflow, because GPT is like, or 5.4 is very disciplined. Like it like has like, it always makes a trajectory, like it goes through all the steps. It's like every single, I even saw it loaded up a skill like without me asking, which Claude doesn't really do sometimes, most of the time. So like it's very detail oriented, and I've seen people say that, and going back to it, and that's why I always have it implement, because it's like, this is the spec, okay, boom, 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 it's gonna knock it all out. But then even like writing the spec, it's like, okay, this is the constraints, boom, boom, like these are all the constraints spec out in a workflow. And I've actually been impressed going back to it, to the planning phase, it being like really good.
How often when you're writing your workflows are you doing like adversarial reviews or anything like that?
Not very often. What I have done this week is I've used, and I still need to do the demo, but I used OpenCode's desktop app, Codex's desktop app, and Cloud's desktop app, and spun up multiple agents in the desktop app using, like, put them on the relay, and then I have like a mini max, for instance, or like O-mini, write the plan, and then I'll say, okay, spin up Claude and Codex to review this plan and talk through it, and then like perfect it. So like the bulk of the work is being done by the lower tier model to get like token usage countdown, and then the review part's actually done like tightening up by the better models. So not adversarial, but just review based.
Yeah.
And it works out pretty easily.
Speaking of planning, this is my transition. You ready? Prepare yourself. Who the F is Sage? No. So I go away to New York, traveling, got this all-day conference. I'm not really on my phone. I come back and Kalik has, in Slack, had hours of conversations with a new
Who else got to talk to if you're not here?
new coworker. Say I was replaced within hours of being gone for a few days. So who is Sage? Am I still allowed? Like, am I outside the inside jokes you guys have going? Who is Sage?
Sage is your planning buddy that lives in Slack or wherever you want to be, and there's a lot of personal agents and people building like agents that are assisting you in different tasks. I think that having a specific and focused agent for different types of tasks will make it more optimal for that particular task, for that particular thing you're trying to do. And so Sage is in particular a planning agent that under the hood uses some of the, like, you've seen the superpower skills, you've seen GStack, some of those things that are, some of those tools that are really dedicated to planning. So it embodies those subset of skills and also has context as files to then iterate over the skills and the files to get context about what you're trying to do, to bring it all together to make for a really powerful planning experience you can just chat with in Slack. And coworkers can also jump in the conversation too.
Yeah, I jumped in a couple times with you and Sage. Like the availability in Slack is actually pretty huge. Like I think you underestimate that when you're working on these things.
Right.
Ease of use is a big part of it.
Yeah.
Now, is Sage the end of it? Like the way you see the world is Slack about to be full of like 5011 Slack bots that all have different purposes? Like you mentioned Sage is a planner. Like,
yeah, I think there's a planner, there's an executor, there's a reviewer, and there's a runtime agent. That's the way I see it. So minimum 4 agents. I don't see a problem having different agents per channel. So maybe there's a brainstorming channel where Sage lives. Maybe there's a hotfix channel where the runtime agent lives and has access to Sentry and CloudWatch and Cloudflare and Datadog. And so you say, hey, like we have an issue, like here's a trace, look at this, help me figure out this debugging. And so that agent has that context. Instead of having a single agent that has like everything, you have a focus agent that has access to only certain things. You don't have all your agents have access to Sentry or your database credential or read access, or whatever. So you have a lockdown agent for each purpose. Yeah. And under the hood, you have agents actually helping that agent. So maybe there's a dedicated Sentry agent. There's a dedicated CloudWatch agent that knows how to read those logs, maybe has access to CLI, and using agent relay communication, they all chat with each other to help figure out and triage the issue to help you figure out the underlying issue. So that's the way I see it. So 5011 agents, maybe different channels to organize.
I see the world the same way. Like so in this event that I went to, the structure of the event was there was, I think like 70 founders and then maybe 15 VCs, and it was vetted and sort of invite only, and so everyone had like a real business.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they had a sort of happy hour to close out the evening that was open to anybody who could just come. And so obviously the sort of mix of people with VC funded companies shifted, and so I ended up having more conversations at the end of the night with people who were sort of less AI native or less on the edge of things, not necessarily thinking about this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And two thoughts come from that. One, it was really fascinating to sort of just tell our story and sort of like this future of like, the world right now has humans with agent appendages, or like it's a human-centered world. And then, thinking about the future, like it is, in my view, going to be agent-centered. There is going to be multiple agents. And in fact, the agent economy might outpace the human one in terms of productivity. And thinking about that world and how that exists, and how there can be these specialized agents for every layer of human life. And so, I was talking to this guy who was building a company for, t-shirts, and talking about how, he messages ChatGPT and how like he, works through business ideas on that. And sort of I got into like, Noodle and Berry, and at the moment I was talking about Sage, and like sort of multiple versions of that. It's not just like the Omni ChatGPT app that you talk to, but rather like you have different personas, people, agents that you can talk to. Maybe some have specialized skills. Noodle is a Mac to my right here, and Barry's a Mac Mini that I can put hats on. Like just talking through that and watching him sort of expand his mind towards that was super interesting. But yeah, the way this relates is what I can say is like I do believe in that future where agents have humans, not humans have agents, right? Like there's there's far more room for many agents than there are for just a one-to-one relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like you have personal agents. So maybe Sage is in Slack, but also you want to have like a sidebar with Sage and WhatsApp. It's still going to have your context because it's all in memory, but it's a private conversation. Like, hey, like I want to plan through this without everyone else seeing. Still, you're going to have that same kind of like context, but personalized as well. And I think that's important to be able to have agents at your disposal. And for, like I said, personal agents, I think is a really good way to.
And to your point, with the right context,
right.
Because the ChatGPT app doesn't necessarily have full context into it. Has memory, and I'm sort of picking on ChatGPT app, but not in a way that you can so clearly define like you can with Sage and sort of your own personalized workforce.
And I was talking to Matt Schumer yesterday, and he's building out like a personal agent.
Yeah,
that's hosted.
You're talking about Agent S?
Yeah, Agent S. Yeah, and it's interesting. He showed me the demo. It's interesting. It's similar in some ways, but it's more like OpenClaw, but replacing OpenClaw. So like manage your email, and it's using Composio under the hood. So it's an interesting app. But his question about this whole thing was, well, will the models outpace this so you don't need that necessarily? Will the models become so good that they can handle all that context? Which is an interesting thought. I'm curious what you. I know what I said, but I'm curious what you.
I don't think, if you think about what context is, and like, even the frontier models with really large context windows, they're by definition, there's always going to be a signal to noise ratio. And so I don't care how smart you are, if you're infinitely intelligent, you can hold everything in your head. Like all signal is equivalent to all noise in terms of context, right? And so there has to be some framework of this part is important and this is the goal and these are the intents and constraints. So I actually, for practical purposes, the frontier models today are absolutely able to handle enough context. And when I talk about making sure that the context is right, it's more about clearly defining the intent of what you want and clearly defining the constraints. And you do that with context. It's not a context problem. Context is the whole point. That's my take on that. So I don't like the frontier models will continue to get better, or really all the models will continue to get better, and context will still be equally as important because it is the signal. And like I said, all signal is equivalent to all noise.
Mm-hmm. One thing I've also been tracking is token usage and thinking a lot about token usage. And part of the reason why I want to build out relay file is to reduce token usage by not having MCP for Notion, not having MCP for Linear, not having MCP for GitHub, but rather just give the agent a file system with the data mounted as files and mapped as files, and we basically hold the schema for the Notion API and then map using that schema and give the agent the ability to actually traverse those files, which are Notion data, Linear data, to then get an overview of what it wants. And then if it needs to dig further into the actual, higher level detail, or deep level of the issue or a deep level of Notion, it can still fetch it via API call. But the actual searching and traversing is all just file operations. And I've been chatting with Sage all week, and it's what, $2?
Yeah, that's crazy. I was really surprised by that. We get, personally, I've been so used to just monitoring my limit, right? Like I have my 5-hour limit, my weekly limit.
Yeah, exactly.
Thinking about it in that way and less about actual API costs, which I know is coming eventually. Like we're all going to have to be thinking in dollars and cents per token.
I mean, I almost think the $200 you pay for a subscription can be much less if tracked closely with very high usage. And again, with Agent Relay, we're with Open Router, which is great, juggling models for different tasks and have experts. So maybe there's a fact gathering agent that is Haiku because it's just traversing files. It gathers it, passes it to Opus with all of the context to be able to then synthesize it and then come up with a decision. Saves a ton of tokens because it's not having to do those fetching.
Speaking of token saving, have you seen the Caveman or RCK or there's a few others, but focused on
RTK? I need to dig into it. You sent that the other day, and I want to look into that, especially for auth, which I'm going to demo that next week. Not sure if you saw the tweet about file, but auth is coming as a follow-up. Hey, you have all these files, you want to limit that, but you want to limit operations too. And I think RTK might be a good
and exactly. So a lot of the common CLI commands that will jack up the token or jack up, loot the context rather, add more noise to the signal ratio. I think that was really smart. And then, the Caveman stuff, why many word when one word do trick? I think there is something to that. And
absolutely,
particularly with, agents on the relay being very chatty, and we've made a lot of strides to sort of make sure that those are more focused beyond just using different models, maybe thinking about encoding language in a way that is less token heavy is interesting too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we should focus on 1,000%. And it's not just token usage; it's latency.
Yeah.
If a user types in a query and we have 5 agents working on it, they're like, "Hey, how's it going? Like, I'm working on this problem." Like, that's valuable seconds that are wasted instead of they are just boom, 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 signal, signal, signal. Like with encoded messaging, it can be much faster and make for a much more powerful experience and more efficient experience. So figuring out what that looks like, I think is very important and could be fundamental to our product, because we're giving agents their own language to communicate. And if the human wants to see it, we could decode it for the human so they could actually read it. But the agents can have whatever communication protocol they want.
Yeah, agreed.
So yeah, I've started thinking about it and have like some kind of bootstrap code and a package called connectivity. But I think it's something we should focus on for sure, and embed that into RelayCast even.
Well, and Relay, period.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, Relay and the inner workings.
No, I wasn't correcting. I think you're right. Cool. Well, a lot happening this week. We blew through our 15-minute budget very quickly today.
Yeah, we haven't tried it much, so yeah, I'm not surprised. But yeah, it was a good week. It was up and down for me a little bit. Not up and down, pretty up actually. I hit all my goals, so actually it's pretty.
Yeah, it was up and down. It started down and it ended up.
Yeah. And workflows, we're working on cloud. The next step is to get Sage using workflows, and again, that is the vehicle in which a lot of things get done.
Well, for all the time travelers watching this in the future, if you'd like to get started on any of this stuff and see what we're talking about, it's agentrelay.com.
No dash.
No dash. Drop the dash. I was proud to say that. People ask about, when I was in person, people asking about Agent Relay. They're like, "Oh, it's just agentrelay.com." It's a great domain.
Yeah, it's solid. No .ai, no .net, .dev, nothing. Just
.com. The originals. Communication. What does .com stand for? Do we know?
I should know that.
Next time we will reveal what .com means from 2 veterans of the internet. Over 50 years of experience between the 2 of us.
Don't know what .com is.
Communication.
We've exposed ourselves with that. We should probably go.
All right, clip that.
Yeah,
all right,
clip that.
it's been real. It's been fun.
Next time.
Until next time.